Hello, and welcome to Fusion Writing, where building character meets creating structure. This is our topic time, and we have so much to share with you. Victoria, what will you share with us on this Tuesday?
Okay, so Kathleen talks a lot about character traits. That's her zone of genius. And though I have dipped a few toes into those waters, that's not where I'm going to take you today. Instead, we're going to swing over to the side of how to look at your characters so that you can actually curate the kinds of things that you want them to exhibit as traits, but also the kinds of things that you want to include to fill them out in the story. So what do I mean by that? Well, we're going to turn to our friends Robert Scholes, James Phelan, and Robert Kellogg, who, if you get my monthly newsletter, you're very familiar with these guys because they show up all the time. And we're going to take a look quickly at 3 areas of reading your characters that will help you build those best selves to carry through your story. The first area is just that. It's reading. When you sit down and you start looking at how are you drafting this character out? Do you have rough draft notes? Are you using Kathleen's character profile diagram to build them out? Are you using my character development cards from my book Zettelkasten for fiction writers, where I walk you through how to develop a character in, I think, 20 plus cards? Whatever those pieces look like, when you sit down and start thinking about how do I want this character to carry my story? Do a close reading. A high-level reading is just kind of skimming over those different pieces, maybe doing some brainstorming, doing some free writing. But what I want you to do when you're ready to really dig into those characters is do a close reading. And that means you're thinking carefully about things like, what is their backstory and how does that affect them? Where do you want to get them to? And what pieces do you need to build in order to get them over to that spot? But more importantly, think about the stew and the pieces in it, because the stew is the whole story. It's all of the characters together. But when you're dialing into just a single persona or a single mask that you're speaking through, what do you want that to look like? And the second level is, how do you want the reader to experience it? That's your second layer, is interpretation. How are you interpreting this character and offering it to the reader so that they can make a decision about things like, do I like this character? Am I rooting for them? Am I rooting for them to fail because I really think they deserve to get punched in the face? What is your reader experiencing, and how are you managing that tension? The reason I mention tension is because that is a key piece of controlling how your reader is perceiving things. If your character is rolling along smoothly, no problems, no challenges, they're kind of milquetoast. Your reader doesn't have much to do with them. They're just there. But if that character is rolling with the punches, meeting challenges head on, maybe getting knocked on their butt, as our friend writer Deb Hart likes to say, those are the things that people get drawn into the story to witness. So as you're making decisions about how you're interpreting the character as the writer and how your readers are receiving them, read closely, look between the lines, and make sure that that's in alignment with the story that you want to tell. The final component is criticism. Now, I'm not going to give too much away because there's going to be a lot about this in my newsletter. However, think about how the general population might receive this character. Do they see them as a protagonist, somebody that you're really hanging in there with, that carries the story? Do they see them as an antagonist? Are they a speed bump or something that gets in the way of the story? Or are they a full-blown villain and they're there to make sure that that hero fails? So those are your 3 areas to think about. But to wrap up, let's look at what does curating actually mean. It means carefully choosing the pieces. Well, what are those pieces? Let's take a simple one. What if your character is role-bound? What does that mean? Well, are they the hero? Are they a helper? Are they the giant slayer? Are they just an adversary? Or maybe they're the best friend. It doesn't matter which role you choose, but if you're having problems getting your head around a character, tie them to a role and make sure that they stay consistent to that role. That is a very simple piece that you can curate to hang that character's hat onto something solid to help you move them through the story. So we've looked at 3 ways of reading your characters as you're going through that development process. And then we've looked at one viable, actionable item, which is to tie them to a role. And that helps you grab onto that character so that you can start doing some of that drafting. So if you want to get more, you're going to have to get my monthly newsletter, which will come out at the first week of next month. And then you can read all about different ways of curating characters. Kathleen?
Oh boy, that sounds so exciting. And you mentioned your character cards from your wonderful book, Zettelkasten for Fiction Writers. It is a giant list. Almost all the letters of the alphabet are used. You'll have a whole packet to define your character. And all of it is in addition to the character traits. This is stuff that you can really use to help make your character, set them in time, uh, give them a look, what kind of car do they drive, all of these things to help make your character really, really solid. So thank you, Victoria. I love that. Well, we're going to be talking about, of course, the character trait of generosity. And as we said last week, generosity is a spirit. When we actually perform the act of generosity, that's kindness. It's related to gratitude because when we receive the kindness of another and we feel gratitude, we're often inspired to be generous ourselves. So we pass it forward. So generosity is in this wonderful cluster of character traits that make life comfortable and smooth for those around us, where we help carry one another's load, bear one another's burden, and support one another. It's part of what makes life enjoyable and comfortable and smooth and happy. Well, character traits exist on a continuum, on a character profile diagram that relates to how is your character, how are our characters performing in the story with respect to that character trait. Well, the very top of the spectrum is the pinnacle position, and that's the character trait is over your character's head. He's not even looking at it. What? So what kind of a character isn't even perceiving generosity? Well, I remember the comic books with Scrooge McDuck. He's this millionaire, Donald Duck's millionaire uncle, and he's sitting on a piles of money, stacks of gold coins, and fingering them and delighting them. And it's like, oh, what I have is mine. What's mine is mine is mine is mine. And that is the classical image of the character who has generosity in the pinnacle position. He's only concerned with his own property, with what belongs to him, and doesn't have the slightest thought of helping anybody else out or even any inclination to look at the problems or needs of any others. Okay, so that's the pinnacle. Then what makes it in the wing? The interesting thing about a character trait when it's in the wing is that usually means that the character is aware of it. He sees it out of the corners of his eyes. He's kind of aware that, oh, he ought to be more generous, but he's not getting there. If he thinks about it too much, it's a nag. Oh, I ought to be willing to share my time. Oh, I ought to be willing to help out. Oh, I ought to be willing to give something to help support this wonderful cause. So when generosity is in the wing position compared to when it's in the pinnacle, it's not out of sight of our character. He can see it, but it's kind of in his peripheral vision. He knows that it's a thing and that he ought to be feeling generous and he ought to be willing to give some of his time or some of his energy or, heaven forbid, some of his money to help. Can't quite get there. Maybe he's got a whole long list of excuses, pull yourself up by your booties, baby. I had to pull myself up by mine. Or maybe it's just like, I'm just too busy. I can't possibly help. Nope. But this character is he's aware of it, but no, can't do it. How about in the rudder position? When generosity is in the rudder position, our character knows that this is a situation where he has to think about it. Am I going to do it or am I not going to do it? He's capable. He can follow through. He can, but will he? And it's just on the edge. And he's thinking about it and he's pondering it. And is he going to make a choice? Now, bear in mind, this rudder stuff, it could be a situation, a specific case, Or it might be his character might be changing, and he's now at the spot where he's going to actually start thinking about helping. He's going to actually start thinking about helping others, giving to situations when it's needed, when it's called for. And this might be part of his character arc where he's coming to be aware that to really be a full member of society, you have to have a spirit of generosity. Now, what about your character who has generosity in the anchor position? In this position, it's a solid part of your character's disposition. He's inclined to be generous. Doesn't mean he will always 100% of the time follow through, but he's inclined to be sharing and to be giving. Now, what about it when it's in the base position? This character is not a balance trait. Generosity is an empathy trait, so it's about people. But the character with generosity in the base is that fellow that we say he'll give you the shirt off his back. And the challenge, of course, is that his wife is going to miss it when she does the laundry. And he might be going a little too far. So we have to be careful there. So this character might be willing to go be a little bit on the imprudent side, but hopefully we will not abuse this character's generosity. So, Victoria, do you have anything to add to our spectrum?
I don't know. It's so exciting, and it's super fun when we can talk about characters in such different ways. This is probably the thing that is the most fun for me in studying writing and narrative and theories about it, is there's so many different directions that you can come at it from. And we get to have the best of both worlds because I can look at character and you can look at narrative, and we have all these different touch points and ways that we cross over, which in my opinion is such valuable information. Whether you've been writing books for 50 years or you're just getting started, we just provide so many lenses that allow even someone that's never written anything to have a fresh look and maybe get inspired and find a way to attack that idea in their head and to get those words on the page. So my question to you is, if people wanted to find us, where might they go?
You would come to LiLLiPub.org. It's where we hang out when we're not on YouTube. And LiLLiPub is just jumping right now. Victoria's doing sprints in the library. You can pop in and do a co-writing session with her. You can come to our fusion writing groups on Saturday where we share our writing and talk about what we're doing. We're just having a wonderful time here on LiLLiPub, and catch our other shows on the LiLLiPub YouTube channel where the Zettelkasten is co-writing an entire book. So come on over to LiLLiPub.org. It's the best $8 a month you'll ever spend if you want to be a writer. See you over there. Bye-bye.
Bye.